jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity popsicle. You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity popsicle. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.
Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Independent Thinking. Well, it's only a few weeks away. The great Freedom Fest, known as the coronation of Obama, will be here. To talk about that and whether or not folks are having their First Amendment rights heard, there are a few folks. First of all, I want to, Brian Vicente, you're with a group called
the DNC-People's Law Project.
DNC's People's Law Project.
Correct.
Now, this is not an outgrowth of the DNC. This is actually an organization to help people who want to protest at the DNC.
Yeah, it's there to help protect free speech rights at the DNC. So if protesters want to get out, we just want to make sure that their voices are heard.
All right, this is not a full-time gig for you. This is more of a passion.
It's becoming more of a full-time gig, but it's not a paid gig. It's more of a volunteer gig, and there's a number of attorneys involved and legal workers and volunteers helping out.
And to show the kind of loudmouths you want to protect with First Amendment rights, we have this long-haired guy, Paul Bame, and you're going to be one of those protesters at the DNC. And you've gone at others. Now, you don't like the term protester. You got a better term for me? Well, you're protesting, aren't you?
Demonstrating, I think, is more effective.
Demonstrating.
You know, demonstrating is a positive thing. Protesting is saying mostly what you don't want. And demonstrating, I find, is what you do want.
So you're a demonstrator?
Yeah.
A demonstrator.
Yeah.
I think of a demonstrator as, you know, the girl who has the no-stick fryware and she's doing an egg for you. She's a demonstrator. Will you be doing any of that sort of stuff?
She's exercising her free speech. I'm exercising mine.
All right. Let's go from the large and narrow it down. First of all, how have things been? You guys have been working with trying to make sure that I'll use protesters, you can use demonstrators, have free speech rights. Give me a definition. What exactly are you worried about?
Well, if you look at prior DNCs and RNCs, for instance, the RNC in New York in 2004, and that's the Republican National Convention, there were 1,800 arrests, and you know they penned in people walking to work. I mean, all sorts of people were arrested, and their rights were violated. And you know, we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen here. So you know, we're trying to essentially make sure people are able to get out there, have a public discussion about what they feel like is maybe going wrong in this country, maybe something they would like to push a certain agenda.
You use the term public discussion. I think of a public discussion, a couple guys going down to the coffee shop, having a beer, and talking. I'm seeing more guys with signs and leaflets who are screaming, "Get out of Iraq," or whatever it is. I see it more as a protest, a demonstration. I don't see a discussion.
Well,
you know, a euphemism?
If you talk to the protesters, they want to have a back and forth with the delegates. They want to be out there speaking to the people, and they're there just as much for the media and for other individuals that may be stopping in to check out the DNC as they are to simply not let their voices be heard. So I think they're pushing for a public discussion, and again, they want to be heard. And the First Amendment is soundly protected in our country. It's one of the few amendments that hasn't been whittled down too far yet. So we're trying to make sure that the Denver authorities and the law enforcement authorities abide by it during this important convention.
Why the DNC? Why the RNC? Out of all the places where people come, there are bigger events, and I know the media is coming. Why waste your time there? What is it you hope to achieve?
Well, I think a lot of people think that it's important for, especially the Democrats, the people who are coming here, to hear their message, to hear we really want health care to be supported in this country. You talk about it and you don't do anything. Poverty on the rise, health care coverage on the rise.
But, you know, Democrats are in Congress every day. You could be out there protesting there.
People do.
Why the DNC, and why are you going to spend your time instead of fishing doing this?
Well, I think it's a huge collection, and it's a huge opportunity to have a discussion not only with the people who directly influence our government, but to have it here in the focus of the media spotlight.
Right,
so hopefully both sides can get some airtime and these issues can come out.
What you really want is for the cameras, when they're too bored of talking about people down inside the Pepsi Center, to pull their cameras aside and hopefully talk to protesters, find out what their gripes are.
Well, everybody's people, right? We're all people, and I think everybody should have a right to speak and should be covered by the media who has something to say.
Well, that's up to the media if they want to cover you. You have no right for the media to be forced to cover you. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that.
All right. So let me ask you about your tactics here. Now, I'm a little worried about some of the things. Greg Spagnuolo sat in this very chair, and he finally admitted, yes, I'm urging civil disobedience. Are you guys urging civil disobedience? And if so, what type? Let's talk about the techniques.
Sure. And the People's Law Project, we're not, engaging in protest. We're here just to help protect protester rights. And, you know, civil disobedience has a long and illustrious history in our country. You look at the civil rights movement and so forth. So we're not here to tell people what to do tactically. We're here to simply make sure that their rights are respected by the police.
When you say
and that
protesters' rights, what rights does a protester have?
Sure. I mean, a protester has a right to get out and petition the government for a redress of their grievances, to get out and speak their mind in a public forum, and to be heard, and to not be silenced, as has happened at prior events, by being arrested and so forth. So, you know, we actually, the People's Law Project, we conduct trainings for protesters where we actually act out common police protester scenarios, sort of vignette form, with some members of our group dressing up like police, other people acting out the role of protester. And it's a really great way for us to explain to people what their rights are in a picket line or in a protest cage or whatever you want to call it.
All right, well, help me out with that. So you're doing a role-playing. So the cop comes and says, you can't be here. What do you train the protester to do?
Well, you know, generally we encourage protesters to use common sense. The police are descending in upon them.
Let's get to the good stuff. What do you teach them to do?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it's just general principles that come out of the Constitution. They have the right to be in a public place. Now, if a police officer tells them to leave, well, they probably should leave, but they should document what's going on, and if they choose not to leave, they may be arrested. By documenting it, we may win it later in court. Another big principle that we try to impart on people is that they do not have to consent to searches. And I think we're going to see a lot of the Fourth Amendment, which deals with search and seizure, being whittled away and trampled upon at events such as this, where we have police officers and other law enforcement agencies asking individuals, let me take a look in your backpack. Oh, empty your pockets, those sort of things. And individuals should know that they have the right to always say no, to always not consent to a search.
But if a cop has a probable cause to believe you've got something illegal in your backpack, he thinks you've got a gun, he's got every right to then search your backpack, correct?
That's correct.
With probable cause.
That's correct, and at that point he's just going to go in and grab your backpack and look. But what police often do is say, hey, you know, let me take a look in your backpack. And a lot of people think if a police officer asks them, they have to say yes. And it's just not true. And we're not here to teach people how to break the law. It's just a matter of asserting their rights. Like, for instance, if an individual had some spray paint or something in their bag in Denver, that could lead to a problem if they allowed the police to search it. They could be accused of being a vandal or a tagger and all these things. So we're here really to encourage people to exercise their rights, to not consent to searches, to get out and speak their mind.
Do you teach them how to do any sort of nonviolent protest? In other words, if they're being arrested, how to turn limp and make sure that it's very difficult for the cops to take them away?
No, we don't engage in any sort of tactics like that whatsoever. I don't know, maybe Paul has some thoughts on that, but we really just encourage people, these are your rights. This is not a way for you to
You're also doing this training.
I have done trainings, yeah.
When you say done training, help me out. Is this the kind of stuff you learn, or do you also learn political tactics of here's how you stay here if a cop wants to leave you? Here's how you put Vaseline on your eyes when the tear gas comes.
I have received trainings like that. You don't put Vaseline on your eyes when the tear gas comes.
What do you do when the tear gas comes?
Hopefully you're wearing goggles and you get away.
And you get away. So,
yeah.
So you actually have trainings on what to do if they pull out tear gas?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Really?
Eye washing and such. There's a really good Denver medic community here, and you can find out all that stuff at their next training.
How far are you guys wanting to go on these protests? And I want to get into this cage that some call it the free speech zone. I'll call it a freedom cage, but I want to get into that as well. How far do you guys want to go with this? I mean,
well, there's not one you guys.
All right.
So
let's talk about you. Fair enough.
I can answer from experience.
Right. From experience, you're close to some place and there's a protest going on. The police say it's time for you to leave. Or I think what it might be a likely scenario here in Denver, it's past curfew. You need to leave the park. What are you guys going to do? What are you going to do, and what would you encourage people to do in that particular scenario?
Well, I think people need to make a decision according to their circumstances. If they are in that park to try to protest a bad law, and they elect to stay in that park in traditional, classical, I'm going to sit down and not move, civil disobedience fashion, there's some things they need to know to do that safely.
Such as what?
You know,
because I'm really good at sitting down. I've got that down pat. I've spent 43 years on